On tonight's show,
we break down and predict all 8 first-round playoff series.
Can the Pellies challenge Golden State? Does Harden get by round 1? And will CP3 exercise his demons?
And in the East, can anyone stop an inevitable 1-2 Hawks-Cavs conference finals?
The Starters 2015 playoff preview starts now.
Good evening, Sweet World, and welcome to the Starters 2015 NBA playoff preview show. If you're joining us on the podcast or catching us on NBA TV, we're very, very happy to have you. I'm J.E. Skeets, and alongside me, as always, Tass Mellis.
Tell your loved ones you'll see them in 2 months. Time for the playoffs.
To my right, Starters blog editor Trey Kirby.
Hey-o!
Hey-o! And finally, the international man of mystery taking it to the max, Lee Ellis.
Amigos.
Hey, Lee.
Yes, the playoffs finally starting this weekend. This is one of our favorite shows of the year. We break down and predict all 8 series. We ask you to do the same. Jump on Twitter, hashtag the Starters with your predictions. Let's just get right into it, because we got a whole lot to get to in the next hour here. We'll start in the West. The Western Conference bracket looks like so. We got the Warriors and Pelicans, Blazers and Grizzlies. Memphis, of course, having home court advantage despite the Trailblazers being the number 4 seed because they won the division. Clippers and Spurs, that's crazy to see in the first round. And the Rockets and Mavericks. Let's start with the 1-8 matchup. Warriors, not a bad season. 67-15. One of the top 2 teams offensively and defensively. They won the season series against the Pelicans. But congrats to the Pelicans, who had to play a Spurs team with a lot of incentive there on Wednesday night. Beat them at home. Anthony Davis going for 31-13. So they get to dance. And the only sad part is they get to draw the Golden State Warriors in the 1-8 matchup.
Yeah, 67 wins, these Golden State Warriors. And we've all got them winning this series pretty handily. 3 of us in 5, Trey. Call them the sweep.
I'm bold, man. If I think the Pelicans are a worse team, I'm going to say it. Go Warriors in this one.
The sweep is just so rare. But we all think, and we all know that the Warriors are going to take this. It's time for them to take center stage. Doesn't it seem like their championship tale is sort of written already?
Wow.
The boyish MVP taking center stage, the highest paid player coming off the bench. You've got the Roracle happening, this great team. 67 wins, one of just 10 teams to ever finish with 67 W's. I mean, we're going to watch them take center stage. They've obviously owned late nights here on the East Coast,
for sure.
But now it's time for them to take prime time and to really shellac the Pelicans.
Yeah, it's just an unbelievable season. I mean, when you look at point differential, just where they fall in some of the best teams of all time, a lot of these teams with a plus 10 point differential in the season going on to win the title. The only one, 71-72 Bucks. They lost in the Western Conference Finals to another team that had an incredible season that year in the Lakers, who went on to win it. It's amazing. You don't worry at all about, Steve Kerr having never coached in a playoff series and nobody on this Warriors roster even getting to the NBA Finals. You don't care at all about the experience being an issue.
Well, Steve Kerr does have a little experience winning championships.
That's
He's
true.
got 5 titles of his own, so he does not necessarily as a coach know what it takes to win a title, but he definitely knows as a player. And you just look at the matchup here between the Warriors and Pelicans, and there's not really anywhere that the Pelicans really have an advantage, it doesn't feel like. It's going to be a bit of a rude awakening when they get to Golden State, into the Roracle, and they see just how loud and crazy a playoff atmosphere can be. At least the Warriors do have experience playing in the playoffs. The finals experience, maybe that'll come a couple of months down the line, but for this first series, they're just too good, too deep, and too many advantages.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to find a hole in the Warriors. Yeah. They got a great defense, a great offense. They got
defensive rebounding, maybe.
Okay, yeah, you're right. You've got to get
Anthony Davis versus
detailed.
Draymond Green. There are going to be some offensive rebounds with Omer Asik. They're going to get some boards. That's one thing the Warriors aren't exceptional at. But that's why we're picking in 4 or 5.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, the chemistry there. They're healthy, I think, another big part for the most part. What can, though, the Pelicans do, Lee, to either steal a game like some of us think or to at least make this a competitive series? Is there anything, or is it just hopefully Anthony Davis goes for 40 and 20s every game?
Well, they'll certainly need that, but if they can keep the turnovers down, because that's really where the Golden State Warriors are lethal, out in the open court. They force the most turnovers, they get the most points in the paint, points off turnovers, off fast breaks, and the New Orleans Pelicans only commit the 6th fewest turnovers in the league. So there is some hope there. If they can just keep the game close, you've got a superstar in Anthony Davis. Now, Andrew Bogut we know is a fantastic rim protector, but if Anthony Davis can maybe draw him away from the rim, he's got that mid-range jump shot now. If Ryan Anderson's healthy, if Drew Holiday, who's come back, is healthy, if Eric Gordon can knock down shots, if Tyreek Evans can drive in the lane. There's a million ifs there, but they're not like a terrible team with no chance whatsoever. They have got some stars. They just need them all to perform to a very high level against a team that's a very good defensive one.
I think you're right. I think a key thing there is they really, as much as they possibly can, got to control the pace of these games.
Absolutely.
Especially when they're in Golden State, where you said it, the turnovers go the other way, transition three from Clay or Steph, and the place goes bonkers. You know, the Pelicans play a slow game for the most part as it is, and they've got to control that speed of the game.
You know, the one thing about the Golden State Warriors is coaches always talk about when you've got a fast break run towards the hoop, but they don't actually do that. They spread out and they go to the perimeter because three-pointers are better than layups for that team. So if you are the New Orleans Pelicans, just watch where Steph Curry is, watch where Klay Thompson is on that fast break. Get to one of those guys at least. If they're going to beat you by Draymond Green and Andre Iguodala getting laps, I would take that over giving up wide open threes to Klay and Steph because they've just been lights out all season long.
Yeah, and especially against this team, Curry's shot nearly 50% from three. I mean, he's literally
somehow just get the ball out of his hands. I mean, that opens up opportunities. Absolutely,
that's going to be the game plan. I feel like for most teams facing the Warriors this postseason. But the question is, you know, Steph's not going to look like the guy a few years ago where you got it out of his hands and he'd turn it over or it'd take time for him to get it back. They've mastered that. They know what to do. He'll get the ball back. He'll hit a shot. And you have to defend him so far away from the bucket that they're just going to end up killing you from somewhere on the floor. There's just too much space with Steph Curry out there hitting from 40 feet.
One thing that is interesting, you know, we're talking about a 67-win team here in the Warriors coming into these playoffs. For the most part, a favorite to either get to the Western Conference Finals, maybe even to the finals. It is a different situation for this squad. I mean, their last wins, really, in the playoffs, they're always the quote-unquote underdog. And that's where it's different. Now you've got the pressure of, hey, you should go out and take care of the Pelicans in 4 and 5. It'll just be interesting to watch how they handle that.
2007, the Dallas Mavericks were 67-15. The Golden State Warriors came in. No one really gave them a chance. They won on the last day of the season to get into the playoffs, rode that momentum, and upset the Mavs. So
coming full circle is what you're saying.
Well, I'm just saying the Golden State Warriors have caused so much heartbreak to other teams that's their last 5 playoff series victories you just saw then.
As the underdog.
As the underdog, they know that anything can happen. Now, obviously, there's a lot of change, you know, since those teams, but it just shows that the Golden State Warriors know that you can't go in there too complacent. And I think Steve Kerr, even though he's not experienced, he's played under Greg Popovich, he's played under Phil Jackson, he'll know that how important it is just to go out there, concentrate on game one, day one, and that's all you need to focus upon.
So you got to remember, the Warriors 39-2 at home, unlike those Dallas Mavericks.
You really would be shocked if they lose a game to the Pelicans at home. You're absolutely right. All right, got to take a break. Of course, lots more still to come when we come back. Are you psychologically ready for a Clippers-Spurs first-round matchup? You better be. It's up next. Back with the Starters NBA playoff preview show. We're still in the Western Conference. Let's get to our next series and make our predictions. And we'll go with the Clippers-Spurs here in a 3-6 matchup, which is crazy.
Too early.
Too early. It does feel like that. They split the season series 2-2, whatever you want to put into that. Clippers, one of the strongest teams in the NBA right now. We're always talking about how great the Spurs were coming down the stretch. Clips won 14 of their final 15 games, and the Spurs, on the final night of the regular season, looking like they had the possibility to be the number 2 seed in home court advantage, and suddenly now they're on the road. We'll be visiting LA. Crazy turn of events, and it just feels weird that this will be in the first round and that one of these teams will be going home early. Predictions? Well, we disagree a little bit. Lee, Trey, and myself all like the Spurs in 6. Tass going with the favorite, really, in terms of seeds, the Clippers in a tough 7 game. This is a very difficult series to try and predict them.
Yeah, are they the favorite? It doesn't feel like it against the San Antonio Spurs. It feels like the Spurs are the favorite. We were calling them the second best team in the conference for the last couple months.
Yeah.
But I think the Clippers have the tools to beat the San Antonio Spurs. It sounds crazy to say because the Spurs have everything going for them, but with the Clippers, you've got an athletic front line. We saw Anthony Davis cause some problems against the Spurs on Wednesday. They've got shooting on the outside, and they've got a heady point guard that needs to beat the Spurs in his mind. I think he's got to exercise the demons against the San Antonio Spurs team after losing to him in 2008 and exercise the demons from last year. The way he finished that series in Oklahoma City in the second round, giving the ball away, very un-Chris Paul-like.
Yeah, basically the worst minute of his career probably between the ill-timed turnover and the ill-timed foul on a three-pointer.
Yeah.
Not typical Chris Paul stuff, but a typical Chris Paul reaction on this horrible, horrible call.
That was a brutal call, and then the bad turnover here late in the game. I'm with you, Taz. I'm a huge Chris Paul fan, and it, in a weird way, almost hurts me to pick the Spurs and think again that Chris Paul, in possibility, could be out in the first round.
Yeah.
And we just get a whole other year of, oh, is he that great? Kicking his team far. I mean, this is just an unbelievable matchup.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, just like the San Antonio Spurs you mentioned, like they don't have home court, but I still think they are the favourite to win this series just because they've been there so many times, and Chris Paul has had these instances in the last couple of years where he can't get his team over the line. But I think you're right, Tass, in terms of the Clippers starting five can probably hang with the San Antonio starting five, but that's when I think the comparison ends. When you look at those two benches, the Los Angeles Clippers bench is nowhere near as dominant as the San Antonio
I would say it's on the
bench.
exact opposite end of the spectrum.
Exactly. Like once they go to their bench, you're out there just treading water, whereas the San Antonio Spurs bench comes out there and they really look to extend the lead, or certainly at least not lose the lead anyway. And when you're talking about a series that could go 6 or 7 games, all of us think it's going to go deep, that's where I think it's really going to add up against the Clippers because they're going to have to play such heavy minutes, their starters. I think if it goes to 5, 6, 7 games, I think they're just going to run out of puff, whereas the Spurs, they just find that extra gear.
Run out of puff. That's a good saying.
Is that an Australian saying? I've never heard that one.
Well, one thing that is different, though, the Spurs don't start on the road. Hardly ever. In their 18-year history here, they've gone to the playoffs 18 years in a row. This is only the second time that they're starting on the road. This is different for them, and it must be a little shocking to them after losing on Wednesday night, going from it looked like the second seed to the 6th seed. They're not an incredible road team at only 22-19, but I feel like, you know, you got to nitpick against this team because they're just that good. And I think Greg Popovich, even though they lost on Wednesday night, I think he was smiling on the inside because he thought to himself,
Popovich smiles?
Yeah, he was on the inside, obviously, not on the outside. But he thought to himself, we're playing a playoff road game here, and it's nice that we get hammered right at the beginning of games because it happens to every team, every NBA season. It's good for us to go through one of these on the road because it's bound to happen. So to get it out of their system, I think, for them is a good thing.
One thing to watch for in this series is how long these games might go. And I'm alluding to the fact that we could get some Greg Popovich and the Spurs playing hack-a-DJ, hack-a-DeAndre Jordan, whatever you want to call it. We saw them do it in the regular season. I believe it was sort of mid-February there. They sent him to the line, DeAndre Jordan, 28 times. 28 times. He shot 10 for 28 at the line that night. You know Pop's going to do this at some point.
Oh, absolutely. He's definitely going to do it. He says it's super ugly and he hates it, but also it works, so he has to keep doing it. And it's not necessarily that Doc Rivers is going to pull DeAndre Jordan because the replacement's going to be Spencer Hawes, but it makes him think at least. And like Lee has said, the Clippers are just not a very top-heavy team. If DeAndre gets on a bad streak and he's shooting 10 for 28 in a lot of games, it's hard to stick with him when your offense is failing that badly. And then where do you go? That's going to be a problem.
Yeah, well, the other matchup you said, Chris Paul, he needs to have an unbelievable series. There's no doubt.
Their starters do.
I'm excited to see, because we're going to see it at times, Kawhi Leonard, who's in the running, of course, for All Defensive Player of the Year. He's going to get Chris Paul for a good chunk of it. Danny Green's going to have his minutes on it as well. They can throw a couple great defensive players on Chris Paul, where then, if you're the Spurs, you can sort of hide Tony Parker a little bit. He doesn't have to exert as much energy as CP3 is going to, having to guard Tony Parker on one end, for the most part, and then have Kawhi Leonard or Danny Green or whoever draped all over him on the other. Tony's going to take like a Matt Barnes and just hang out, and I think he could be huge offensively because of that.
Definitely, and in the past playoffs, putting a big guy on Chris Paul has been a way to frustrate him. He hated when Thabo Sefolosha has been on him. He's just hated having that much extra length on him in the past, and now the Spurs are going to be able to throw 2 guys at him. Not to mention Corey Joseph will come in, play 5 minutes, and just press him full court. They're going to make it tough for Chris Paul.
I just believe in the Clippers starters. They're definitely thin. We know that, but I said, you know, the starting front line of Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan causes problems to the Spurs. Blake Griffin, 25 points a game this year against the Spurs. DeAndre, in that Anthony Davis mold, just get out there and do your thing. Thiago Splitter's health is a bit of a question mark as well. And then Matt Barnes, definitely the least best player offensively for the Los Angeles Clippers in the starting unit, but he's got to make Tony Parker pay. If Tony Parker goes over to him, JJ Redick's got to be huge. That starting lineup has got to be monstrous.
And Doc Rivers just has to find a way to make it all work. I mean, he's a great coach. We know that. He's a championship-winning coach. So he has to find some strategy to somehow outsmart Greg Popovich. It's no easy task, but he is the sort of guy who will come up with some sort of crazy scheme. And if it gets rolling and they get some success with it, then maybe that will give them the chance to win. But it just, for me, I look at all those things that the San Antonio Spurs do so well. You know, you mentioned the defense of Chris Paul. They've got such a deep bench, so much experience. I just can't see the Clippers beating them 4 times out of 7 games.
It's always weird when you head into a series and the loser, whoever does lose this thing, it's just going to be a terribly disappointing year.
For sure.
If you end up falling. They're the 2 hottest teams in the league. I already told you that coming into this. Last 2 months, since February 16th in the Western Conference, only the Warriors with a better winning percentage. Clips 21-7 over the last little stretch here, and the Spurs 21-8. So that's why, again, this is just such a great matchup. And I'm glad to see that most of us have it going long. It's got to be a 6 or 7 series.
It definitely feels like it's going to be one of those legendary first-round series we come back to time and time again.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move on to the Blazers and the Grizzlies in the 4-5 matchup. Again, the Blazers won their division, so they're the 4th seed, but that doesn't mean they have home court advantage because the Grizzlies with the better record. So this will open at the Grindhouse when they go at it this weekend. The Grizzlies swept this season series 4-0. It's a bit of a clash of styles with the way these two teams play, but I think the first thing you have to talk about with this one are all the injuries, and all of us leaning towards the Grizzlies with our predictions. Tess says it goes 7. Lee, Trey, you like it in 5. I'll go 6. I'll split the middle. But yeah, the injuries, it's tough to pick the Blazers with how banged up they are.
Definitely the Blazers are the ones that we look at and think, oh man, I mean, decimated with Wesley Matthews, especially not just Wesley Matthews' skill set, just the heart that he brings to this team. And it goes down the line with the Blazers squad. But then you look at the other side, and the Grizzlies are banged up too. Not to the same degree that Wesley Matthews and the Blazers have lost from a lot of the wing position. Aaron Aflalo, we don't know his situation. He is Wesley Matthews' replacement. He's got a shoulder injury. We're going to see him during the series. Will we see him right at the beginning? We don't know. Nicholas Batum, we can expect him to play, but he is banged up. And then you look at the Grizzlies. Tony Allen hasn't played in a while, 9 straight games because of a hamstring injury. And Mike Conley isn't 100% as well with the foot sprain. He hasn't played in 4 games. So that's, to me, it takes a little bit away from this series, and I feel like it's really evenly matched. I mean, the Memphis Grizzlies just haven't played great basketball the last few months.
Definitely true.
So I feel like it's going to go long. I think LaMarcus will get off, and it'll just be a long, grinded-out series with the Grizzlies finding a way to take it.
I was going to say, is that why you ultimately, in the end, go with the Grizzlies in 7? You think it's going to be a long series back and forth, but the stars of the Blazers in Aldridge and Lillard going up against the stars of the Grizzlies in Gasol and Zebo?
I mean,
grind it out, battle it out?
Well, the Grizzlies just aren't playing great basketball.
Sure.
And they'll find a way to win 4 games. I just think that the Blazers will find a way to win 3 games, but that'll probably be the extent of it.
And the home court advantage thing is kind of huge for the Grizzlies. Their bench plays a lot better when they're in the Grindhouse, and with Tony Allen struggling with injuries, Mike Conley struggling with injuries, they're going to need their bench a lot more. And it's nice to have 4 games where you can expect the bench to probably show up as opposed to 4 games on the road where you never really know what you're going to get from the Grizzlies. I just think it's going to be too many pieces missing for the Blazers, which is too bad because they definitely play a style of basketball that would be kind of a perfect opposition for the Grizzlies.
Well, that's exactly it. You're right. Again, it's that clash of styles. The Blazers, they want to shoot a bunch of three-pointers. They're 3rd in the league in terms of three-point attempts, while the Grizzlies, they want to do their work inside. And why wouldn't you when you got Zebo and Marc Gasol and co there? They're 1st in the league in points in the paint. So which style wins out here? Will the 3-ball be dropping for the Blazers and keep them in some games? Of course, going through Aldridge as well, who has played great.
Yeah.
And it gives them some trouble. Actually gives a guy like Zebo some trouble because of his length on the block.
He does, and Lillard and he were both fantastic in the first round against the Rockets last year. But the reason I went for the Grizzlies is even when they were fully healthy, the Grizzlies handled them pretty easily this season, I felt. And that's where I think that the Blazers are going to struggle. I just don't think they can really handle Zebo and Marc Gasol because Mike Conley, as you mentioned, is injured, and so is Tony Allen. But those other guys are just such good grind-out players. It just slows the game down for the Blazers. And I think that, Lillard's going to have to carry such a heavy workload, and Aldridge as well. I mean, they're very good players. They're all-stars, but I'm just not sure if they can really tough it out for a whole 7-game series. And I don't think it's even going to go that far. I think it's going to be the Grizzlies in 5 for that reason.
But, you know, you just said it, like, those two guys, Aldridge, Lillard, they are in that superstar level. We saw what Aldridge did in last year's playoff when they sort of upset the Rockets in the first round. He was a monster.
Yeah, he was.
In the first couple of games, and Lillard with the big shot to end the series.
Yeah, I think you know, with Mike Conley sort of hobbling around, and we'll definitely see him, you're probably going to see Tony Allen on Damian Lillard just to take some shots away, because he is the weapon that will help out Lamar. LaMarcus is going to get off. I don't think there's a question about that. It's whether Dame is going to help him out. And I think the Grizzlies are going to try and take him out with Tony Allen.
It's really disappointing, just the Blazers having lost all those players, because they were having such a good season.
Yep, for sure.
Wesley, as we've mentioned, is the heart and soul of that team as well. So just disappointing that we won't get a chance to see him.
There's the picks again. All of us going with the Grizzlies. Tass likes it going 7. Which, look,
I got you, Blazers fans.
We're all fans of Game 7, so let's hope we get it. All right, when we come back, we'll look at the West 2 and 7 matchup and debate whether the Mavericks can upset their Texas rivals. Come on back. You're watching the Starters NBA Playoff Preview Show. Back with the Starters. Let's get to our final Western Conference matchup and make our predictions for the Rockets and the Mavs in the 2-7 spot. Hey, a couple more 50-win teams out west there. See the Rockets doing it both offensively and defensively. I think it always surprises people that they're really a better defensive team than they are an offensive one because of James Harden. And you see the Mavs offensive and defensive ratings as well. Rockets took the season series 3-1. So predictions, where are we going? Whoa, that's a lot of red on the screen. Everyone leaning towards the Rockets as the favorites, again with the home court advantage as the 2 seed, but a lot of us have it going long. Tass and Lee say in 7 games Rockets. Trey and I say this one will end in 6. This is a weird series, but there's a lot of sort of fun angles to tackle, be it the Chandler Parsons revenge game or Mark Cuban and Daryl Morey probably going at it on Twitter at some point. Maybe playoff Rondo, is that a real thing still? But I think you have to start with James Harden and whether the Mavs can slow him down.
Yeah, and whether or not James Harden can win a playoff series as a #1 guy. Because the reason they lost last year to the Blazers was because James Harden wasn't himself, it felt like. He did not get going until basically Game 6, which was the last game of the series. This is James Harden we're talking about. We're talking about an MVP candidate who didn't really have a good series. I think that's been weighing on his mind all offseason, during the FIBA tournament. Am I going to get better come this postseason? Because last year, from the regular season to those 6 games that he played against the Blazers, everything dropped off. His free throws, in comparison to his field goals, dropped off. He just started chucking 3-pointers, and he wasn't getting to the line. Everyone's asking, will he get to the line this postseason? I think we're going to see a much different James Harden this postseason.
And the huge difference between this year and last year, the Mavericks don't really have a Wesley Matthews to throw at James Harden. You look at their roster, and it's kind of hard to even figure out who's going to even really guard him. I'm sure Rondo will get some time, but it's been a long time since Rondo's played meaningful defense in the playoffs. And outside of that, it's like Monte Ellis, no thank you. Chandler Parsons, no thank you. It could be a feast for James Harden, assuming he, like Tass is saying, he's a different guy, and he wants to get his free throws, and he doesn't want to settle, and he wants to keep getting to the rim, which I think he does.
Yeah, what do you think, Lee? When you look at this series, where do you sort of zero in on in terms of a factor?
Well, obviously James Harden's huge, but Dwight Howard is just as big, I think, for the Houston Rockets. I mean, he's at that stage of his career right now where we're really waiting to see Dwight return to that 2009 Orlando Magic Dwight, where he can dominate a series. And he's going up against a guy, Tyson Chandler, who's a fantastic defender, but he's not as good as he was a couple of years ago. He's not the same athletic person he was. And Dwight really has to put his stamp on this game. Get the ball inside, make sure you're dominant. You know, he's going to get fouled. They may even go to a hack of Dwight at some point, but that's fine. He's just got to be out on the floor. And on the defensive end, when the when the Mavericks go inside, he's got to be there and be a presence for them and really turn them away, because we know Dwight is a very impactful player when he wants to be, but there are times where he sort of wanders through a game, and now he's got a real opportunity to really stamp his game.
Do you want him to post up, though? Do you want that a part of the game, or do you want James to run pick and roll?
You want him to be aggressive. You want Dwight to be out there aggressive at both.
Well, let's not forget, he was great in the playoffs. I mean, they lost in the first round, but he was great.
Well, that's the thing. Like, he was good, but they didn't turn that into a win. And now he's at that stage of his career. Like I said, he has to put the Rockets in a position to really contend for the conference finals at least. And he's coming off an injury, but he's had enough time. You think that he's got his legs underneath him. So I want to see how he reacts now. And as I say, Tyson Chandler's a very good defender, but the Mavericks aren't a particularly great defensive team.
You know, after a team loses at home with home court advantage in the first round, like the Rockets did last year, losing those first 2 games at home to the Blazers, they're going to be a totally different team. So the question is Rick Carlisle going to be able to devise something to steal a game in Houston, or are the Rockets going to be able to win both? I feel like the Rockets are definitely going to take one at home. It'd be crazy to predict the same thing happening. But I feel like you mentioned, I feel like Dwight has the ability to help out James Harden. I feel like this team is good enough to at least win one and hopefully win two.
Well, let's get to the playoff Rondo. Is this a real thing? Does anyone believe that we're going to have a different Rondo show up here in the postseason? We know they've been a different squad since he even joined the Mavs. Not as great offensively. They were the best team offensively in the league before he came over. Dropped a little bit there, but has helped a little defensively. Do you buy the idea that this guy just takes his game to another level in the postseason?
This is the verdict on the trade. I mean, it doesn't really matter if the Mavericks were better or worse with Rondo during the regular season, because if playoff Rondo is a thing, and if he can kind of help guard James Harden and make things tough for him, then it was worth making the trade for him. But if not, if he's just the same as he's been during the regular season, helping out, and people are helping off of him and that kind of stuff, it was kind of just a wasted trade, but you had to go for it. I don't know. I think Rondo still will show up a little bit, but I don't think he's the same player he was 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think a lot of people agree with that.
Yeah, and this team is just thin. When they made the trade, we knew that they were thin. Trading Brandon Wright, trading Jay Crowder for Rajon Rondo. Now they've got injuries. I think that comes into effect. Rondo will be good, but Chandler Parsons hasn't been able to play in 6 games. And when you're such a thin team, every injury counts. Devin Harris has an injured toe. I'm worried about this team just being able to throw out enough guys against the Rockets.
One good thing for the Mavs, Dirk has sort of rounded into the Dirk of old form over the last couple of weeks. He's looking a lot better. So, again, there's the predictions. Let us know what you guys think on Twitter, hashtag the starters. All of us taking the Rockets, but we think it'll be a long series. All right, quick break. When we come back, we'll jump over to the other conference. We'll start with the Celtics and Cavs when we return. You're watching the starters. Welcome back to the Starters NBA playoff preview. We've tackled the West, made our predictions for those 4 series, so let's do the same in the Eastern Conference. Quick look at the entire bracket. We have the Hawks versus the Nets in the 1-8, Raps and Wizards in 4-5, Bulls, Bucks, and the Cavs, Celtics in the 2-7. And let's start with that one, Cavaliers and the Celtics, because similar to the Spurs and Clippers series, with hot teams coming in and matching up in the first round, you can really say the same.
Are you comparing this to the Spurs
and
Clippers?
I'm saying that the
Legendary
Cavs
teams,
and the Celtics are 2 of the best teams in the Eastern Conference over the last 2 months of basketball. Yes, that is what I am saying, Pat. But you're right, it probably will have a different outcome than the Spurs Clips. May not be as entertaining. And all of us are taking the Cavaliers in this one. Not a surprise. Tass and myself going Cavs in 5. We like the Celtics and Brad Stevens stealing 1 game. Lee and Trey say, no. Get the brooms out. LeBron and the Cavs will take care of business.
This is going to be fun to watch the Cleveland Cavaliers just start their run with their big 3 into the postseason. How can the Cavs steal a couple games? I think the only way they can really steal a couple games is if LeBron says, hey, you guys go get your feet wet. Kyrie, Kevin Love, go do your thing. I'm just going to hang out, sort of like he did at the beginning of the season where he kind of hung out on the perimeter and said, I want to see how you guys play. And then maybe the Cavs can steal a couple games, or the Celtics, I should say, could steal a couple games, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, this to me seems like the least competitive series of the first round. The only reason the Celtics got 2 wins against the Cavs in the regular season is because LeBron didn't play. I just think that LeBron is going to set the tone from the outset, saying this isn't the same old Celtics, this isn't the same Cavs, we're running right through you.
What will be fun to watch is Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love getting their first playoff experience here. I mean, they've never even been to the postseason, which is crazy to say. LeBron, when you look at the key players, at least when it comes to the Cavs, the only one with any real playoff experience, J.R. Smith with 51 games under his belt. But yeah, it's as much as I love the Celtics and how they played over the last couple months, and especially what Brad Stevens can get out of a team, it's tough to try and imagine the Celtics slowing down LeBron. Jay Crowder, big fan of him, but good luck. Evan Turner, yikes.
Brandon Bass will get a shot on.
I know. It's just like, if LeBron is locked in, I don't know how they slow him down.
The Celtics can't overcome the talent disparity. That's what it comes down to. But, with Brad Stevens, I expect his Boston team to be very well prepared, very well organised, disciplined on defence, and they'll try to do whatever they can to make the game as slow as possible. But when you've got Kyrie, Kevin Love, LeBron James is just out there running and gunning like that, there's just nothing they can really do to slow that team down so much that they can force this series beyond 5 games max.
David Blatt is not giving them, any bulletin board material, though. He was quoted as saying that this is not a simple first-round matchup, but most of us do expect the Cavs to be a championship contender, and it's always interesting to see if you can take care of a series very quickly.
Yes.
To even get yourself a little bit more rest heading into a second round. If another series that you're waiting for those teams you're just basically waiting around.
One thing though for the Celtics, you know that LeBron has had a few heartbreaking memories in Boston. You know those fans are going to be out there giving him
Those have been exercised, man.
Yeah, he's also had some crazy games lately.
Listen, I'm just trying to make a case for the Celtics here, right? So because, you know, like he's been there, he's had some losses there. I know he had some wins there with Miami, but you know, Boston are pretty passionate fans. We know that. So
Yeah,
they'll
too bad
make,
they can't play.
Yeah, they'll make life as uncomfortable as possible for LeBron. But at the same time, I think LeBron will want to get some revenge over those losses he's had there.
What the Celtics have done with their defense has been pretty impressive. They were very laughable at the beginning of the year, have moved all the way up to 12th best defense. It's been really, really impressive. Where they're not great, though, is right at the rim. When LeBron and Kyrie want to go to the rim, there's no one to really get in their way. You know, Olenek and Zeller,
No shot
and
blockers.
Sullinger and Bass, and just name for their 4 bigs. Nobody's going to get in their way. They're just not great at defending the rim, and that's where if LeBron wants to do his thing and he really wants to get going, and Kyrie really wants to do his thing and really get going, they're not going to be stopped.
Yeah, there's not a lot of athletes on the Celtics front line. That's why I can actually kind of see a pretty big series for J.R. Smith, because you figure Avery Bradley or Marcus Smart will take Kyrie, and then once the defense breaks down, the ball will find J.R., and you know he'll be ready to shoot.
Yeah, he's not
going to be shy about taking important shots in the playoffs. I don't think.
And on the other side, the reason I have the Celtics stealing a game, and I think it's going to come at home if they get one, Isaiah Thomas, a bit of an X factor in this series. The guy is, he's in the running for 6th man of the year because he can explode. He comes in there, he changes the game a little bit, and I think we're going to get either a huge Isaiah Thomas half or even game that will help the Celtics steal one and make this a 5-game series. Because he's so important if Boston starters struggle to score, which they have at times this season.
That's what it's going to come down to, though. Something like that. A guy like Isaiah Thomas going for 35, maybe just getting red hot in the 4th quarter with the home crowd behind him, and they just happen to steal one because they just don't have the talent to be able to go out there and match the Cavs player for player.
Yeah, big 3 when the Cavs have played against the Celtics, they've won by 46 points.
Yeah, it's
they
crazy.
smoked the Celtics. But you look at the season record and you think, oh, maybe there's a chance, but there isn't.
All right, let's move on to another series then in the East. It's the 4-5 matchup. It's the Toronto Raptors against the Washington Wizards. Both of these teams stumbling into the playoffs. John Schumann had a crazy stat. Raptors and Wizards combined records through December 29th was 46-15. Since December 30th, basically in the 2015 year, their combined record 49-54. I'm calling this the can the coach series because I feel like whoever loses this series might get canned, but we can get to that later, either Whitman or Casey. All of us taking the Raptors. I think this is one series where a lot of people might be split, whether you take the Wiz or the Raps, but all of us say this thing.
We're all hedging here.
Going Game 7, back in Toronto with the Raps coming out on top. Of course, they lost Game 7 at home last year to the Brooklyn Nets, so that would have to change there. This is a weird series, though, with the way these teams have come into the playoffs.
Yeah, when you're picking 7 games, you see any expert picking 7 games, you basically don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you're just throwing a dart at the dartboard here. And the dart is, in this case, that the Raptors lost Game 7 at home. There were 5 round ones that went to Game 7 last year. 4 home teams won, and the Raptors were the only ones who didn't. So this year, I feel like those fans, you mentioned the Celtics fans, will help them win Game 1 because they didn't do that last year against the Brooklyn Nets. And yes, Paul Pierce will be yapping at Raptors fans now with the Wizards after being with the Nets last year. I'm sure he'll be saying to his teammates, hit them and they'll fold. They won't be able to deal with us. I'm sure that'll be the case. But I feel like the Raps, as we've mentioned, the last few months, both these teams just been struggling, and home court advantage will be the reason that they get the victory.
Yeah, you said Paul Pierce will be talking. That's all he does usually. We talked about this on the show earlier in the week. A crazy interview with Jackie McMullen on ESPN. He threw a little dart at the Raps bulletin board saying, we haven't done particularly well against Toronto, but I don't feel like they have the it that makes you worried. Well, DeMar DeRozan was told about this and Paul Pierce's comments. And he told CBS's James Herbert, Paul Pierce always got something to say. He said something last year, he's just got to say something. Just let him talk. I could care less what he said. He just better hope Chicago, or however it got to work out, win or something, so he won't see what the it is. And he says, I wish I see Paul Pierce. I wish I see Paul Pierce should be on a t-shirt. I don't know why.
Expletive.
Yeah, I threw that in there.
I wish I see Paul Pierce.
As well. I think Game 1, like last year with the Raps and the Nets, is so important.
Oh, man, yeah.
Especially for Toronto. They can't lose Game 1 like they did against the Nets last year. They can't play from behind in this series. They've got to tighten, especially Game 1, and maybe even just hold down home court. But I have no idea how this series is going to go, just the way these teams have played.
Yeah, they're kind of similar teams, the way they've both been struggling and the way they don't really have a superstar who is going to be in charge of things. It kind of comes down to me who plays better between the Wizards bigs and the Raptors guards. If the Raptors guards are on fire the whole series, they're going to win. If the bigs for the Wizards can punish Jonas Valanciunas and Amir Johnson, then I think the Wizards have a good choice. It's a good chance. It's just kind of hard to say which is going to happen since both these teams are crazy inconsistent.
I joked about it a little bit, but do you really think that the loser of this series, the coach, could be done? Dwayne Casey with the Raps or Randy Whitman with the Wizards?
Whichever team loses, it's going to be a disappointing season because they both made the playoffs last year and both had expectations coming in. So now they're in a position where one of them's going to be out in the first round again. So certainly there is going to be pressure. And we know that Randy Whitman, I mean, he got the contract extension last season, as did Dwayne Casey. So, you know, either way, the franchise is probably going to be looking at their coach and thinking maybe it's time for a change. But, you know, it also comes back to a player like DeMar DeRozan. I really want to see how he learnt from last season. I want to see him get to the free throw line like in the teens in that game one, because if you remember against Brooklyn, he took a lot of jump shots, and I know that's his game, but they weren't dropping, and he didn't sort of have any other sort of fallback plan. So a guy like him, he's now got the experience, get inside, get those easy points, get the scoreboard ticking over, and I think that will help when the game gets close towards the end to see the Raptors get a win.
You're talking about the Raptors' wings. To me, the reason that the Wizards are going to lose this series is their wings. No Trevor Ariza. It was a huge difference on their team last year. Just the attitude. I know Paul Pierce brings, you know, the verbal attitude, but Ariza actually brought some game to the floor on both ends of the floor. And I'm with you, Trey, as far as whose strength is going to come out on top. Is it going to be the Wizards with Nene occasionally showing up and Marcin Gortat, or is it going to be Lowry taking this team on his back along with DeMar DeRozan? It's whose strength will come out on top. It's very difficult.
Tass, you're a Raps fan like I am. How petrified are you that Paul Pierce is going to hit a game winner against this team at some point?
Come
on.
I don't know. Well, you know, Paul Pierce, the ESPN article came out, all that yapping, and then he went 0 for 2 in that game. I
don't know. I'm scared.
This is why the Wizards got Paul Pierce, though, in the offseason for a playoff series. You know, he doesn't have to perform necessarily all season long in the regular season.
Or all game long, yeah.
Yeah, if a game's tight, though, Paul Pierce will be on the floor in that fourth quarter, and you know that John Wall, he'll probably have the ball in his hands. He'll be looking for Paul Pierce.
I feel like Ariza got them to that point, though, and Pierce doesn't play for the first 3.5 quarters. It doesn't have to do the same thing that Ariza did.
Yeah, but Pierce is poised to be like the biggest Toronto villain that never actually played for the Raptors. They love booing Vince Carter, Tracy McGrady, Chris Bosh when he comes home, but Paul Pierce has already a history. He's the kind of guy who gets under any team's skin.
He absolutely does.
It's going to be fun seeing him back there.
Gets under his old teammate's skin.
Yeah, he might punch Porter in the face. That'd be great. So there you go. We all have the Raptors in 7, which means we really have no idea how this series is going to go. Let us know on Twitter. We'll take a break. When we come back, look at the final matches in the East. Hawks and Nets and the Young Bucks versus the Charging Bulls. You're watching The Starters. Welcome back to The Starters NBA Playoff Preview Show. Let's get to the final 2 series in the Eastern Conference. And we'll start with the Hawks and the Nets. It's the 1-8 matchup. The Nets getting in over the Pacers on the final day of the regular season. Oh, I was so happy about that. Yes, Nets fans, I know you hate me. Hawks won the season series 4-0.
By a healthy margin.
Yes.
17 points per game.
Which is why, not a real surprise that everyone is backing the Hawks. Some of us, 3 of us, Tass, Lee, and myself, saying it's a sweep. Trey goes with the gentleman's sweep, possibly.
Hey, I'm just giving the Nets a little cred for having a bunch of veterans on their team that know how to play in the playoffs.
But yeah, again, the Hawks may enter the postseason as one of the most underrated 60-win teams in recent memory.
Yeah, I find it pretty bogus, actually, that teams were thinking about, or you know, the fans of team bases were thinking about wanting to get on their side of the bracket. I understand staying away from the Cavs, but it's bogus about the Atlanta Hawks and how they play.
I am really excited, though, to see how the Atlanta Hawks now actually turn this great regular season into the playoffs, because the one question mark has been, do they have a superstar that can actually then carry this team? And the answer is no, because it's a community. They all share the ball. Everyone gets involved. But will that be a factor now in the playoffs? But you mentioned, like the Brooklyn Nets, even though they haven't had a great season, they've got those veteran guys, Joe Johnson especially. If the game gets close, what do the Atlanta Hawks do? Does their game plan in any way get nervous, and do they have any problems closing out a game?
So you picked them in 4, so you...
I know, I don't think it's going to happen. But
So all that said, I absolutely think they'll get crushed.
Yeah, I mean, based on what we've seen during the regular season, I think they're going to go out there and hammer the Nets. But we always know in the playoffs things are different, and teams tighten up, and things that worked in the regular season don't necessarily always work in the playoffs.
Yeah, I do feel that they're just going to work the ball all together, and they're not going to have any problems. Later on, yeah, maybe there's a question of, okay, there's the San Antonio Spurs East. Can they step up in a Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, Tim Duncan type way? That'll be a question, I think, for round 2 or round 3 when they need that. Because in this round, they're not going to need that whatsoever. They're just going to play team ball, and that's going to be enough.
Sure. One problem maybe for the Hawks, guarding big man Brook Lopez inside. It's a smaller front line with the Hawks, a talented front line in their all-stars, Horford and Millsap, and even if you're going to Pero Antic and Muscala, maybe even get some Bird because he's a big guy. But Brook Lopez has been great over the last 3 or 4 weeks of this regular season. He played well against the Hawks when he played them. They're just going to feed him the ball and go inside. I think that's the game plan. I think that should be the game plan if you're the Nets.
And he's a legitimately big guy. He's going to be bigger than Al Horford is down low. Thaddeus Young's not really going to punish Paul Millsap too much on the glass, which is good for the Hawks. But I do think Brook Lopez can be effective in this series. It's just a matter of, is he going to go out there for 4 to 5 games and actually produce every single night there?
Yeah, and I mean, Jeff Teague, he had a great season. A lot of those Hawks have. They had 4 playing in the All-Star game.
Playoff Teague.
So they have got numerous weapons, and that's the one thing about the Atlanta Hawks. If Jeff Teague is not having a good game, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to fall apart. They've got Kyle Korver, who's been great. Horford, again, another great player. And their bench, Dennis Schroeder, has been really, really good. I really love watching him come out this season, and when he gets burned, the Atlanta Hawks are, maybe not just as good, but they certainly don't fall backwards when he's out there. So there's lots of good things. Mike Budenholzer, again, fantastic coach, really got this team ready to go. I think they're going to do it quite easily, but, you've always got to give some sort of leeway that it is the playoffs.
Yeah, but you looked at them last year and the way they dealt with the Pacers. It was a good series. Obviously no Al Horford, obviously just a different team.
They should have won that series. They had a chance to win that series
Yeah.
in Game 6 here in Atlanta, the Hawks.
Yeah, I feel like they have composure, despite not having a ton of playoff experience going deep. I feel like this team is pretty composed. I don't think that there should be any worries, and there should be a credit given to this coaching staff for keeping them sort of together the entire year. I'm not worried.
Especially the last month where they've been kind of a little bit off their focus because they've wrapped up that number 1 seed.
But they're still playing well.
Yeah, no, they are.
I know. People forget that.
All right, so there you go. Everyone taking the Hawks. Trey's got the Hawks in 5, everyone else with the sweep. All right, final series in the playoffs. It is the Bucks and it's the Bulls. It's going to start in Chicago. Number 3 seed Chicago Bulls taking on the young Milwaukee Bucks, getting to 500. So a very successful season. Of course, Milwaukee going from the worst record last year in the league to a solid playoff position, getting the 6th seed. Yes, they've struggled down the stretch and struggled since trading Brandon Knight, but an interesting matchup, maybe just in terms of location. You would have thought that these teams would have played a lot in the playoffs. They haven't seen each other in a long, long time, but in the end, our predictions, everyone's saying the Chicago Bulls. Lee likes it going 7.
Interesting.
Trey and myself 6. Tass, a little shorter, says Bulls in 5. What are you looking at in particular with this series?
It's going to be interesting because we know the Bucks are just good on one side of the basketball and stink at the offensive end, but they're fantastic at the defensive end. While we're looking at a team in the Bulls who are very, very good on both sides of the basketball despite all the injuries. I mean, they're really good on both sides of the ball. I think they're going to destroy this young Bucks team. I think the Bucks are one team that's just simply looking to next year. They kind of got good.
Happy to be there.
Yeah, they're good a lot earlier than people expected them to be. They've got 3 guys in their starting lineup who haven't played a playoff game. I don't expect them to hang with the Bulls whatsoever.
I think anytime you talk, about the Chicago Bulls, you want to jump right to Derrick Rose. How's he going to be? How is he going to look explosive? Is he going to lead the team? I don't think he has anything to worry about in this series, honestly, because the front court of the Bulls are going to be trouble for the Milwaukee Bucks. I mean, again, if they're all healthy.
Well, the Bulls have been legitimately great when their starting lineup has been healthy this year. It's the first time they're going into the playoffs with a healthy, intended starting lineup since 2012, and it just seems like they just have too many players when you factor in their bench being a lot, much improved this year. I think you're right about Derrick Rose not having to do a whole bunch. He's just going to have, 4 to 7 games to kind of get back in the swing of things, which is going to be nice for them. It's going to be weird just seeing him in the playoffs. It's been 4 years since he's been there.
I think it's a perfect storm for the Bulls getting the 3 seed and then again, the possibility of playing the Cavs in the second round because just that. Rose doesn't have to go out there and worry about putting up 30 points a game or anything. They're going to win this with their front court. They're going to go through those guys. It's going to go through Pau Gasol. The offense is going to run through Noah for the most part. Mirotic, whatever. It'll be the bigs that win this series, and Rose can slowly sort of just work into it. And then we'll really have to take on a bigger role to try and upset the Cavs if they meet.
And it's a big advantage to the Bulls. Like you said, the regional thing, playing 2 hours, a 2-hour drive. You stop at the Mars Cheese Castle on your way up to Milwaukee, and then you're there. There's going to be 7 home games for the Bulls this year. The Bucks were trying to sell $35 for 2 seats just so that they could fill out their arena in playoff games, because they know that the fans haven't necessarily shown up, and Bulls fans, there's a ton of Bulls fans in Milwaukee in the first place. It's an easy drive. There's going to be a lot of red in the crowd and not necessarily the green and red.
You know, you say the Bucks are happy to just be there, but no one even expected them to make the playoffs. I think they're a little bit of an unknown quality in that respect. And I think...
And you've got this thing going 7.
Yeah, because I just like how you mentioned, Tass, they're only good at one end of the floor. Well, defense is fine. That's good. I'd rather them be better at defense and offense right now, because at least they can stop a team from scoring. So, I mean, I think the Bulls are going to win, but I'm really interested to see how Yanni plays in the series. I mean, Michael Carter-Williams, we know, is not a great shooter, but maybe he can cause a few problems to Derrick Rose. Who knows? Jason Kidd did a great job with Brooklyn last year in the playoffs. So, you know, the Bulls will win this series, but I'm excited to watch it just to see how the Bucks perform.
Very pumped that we have Anthony Davis in the West and the Greek Freak in the East in the playoffs. That'll be fun. All right, one more break. When we return, a wedgie on the final night of the regular season.
Romantic.
Could it be true?
Welcome back to the Starters. I didn't think we'd get this in just because it's a playoff preview, but we found a way to squeeze in the final wedgie of the season. A sticker on an offensive rebound just got shoved in there.
Oh, of the regular season, at least.
Yes.
Let's hope we get some playoff wedgies.
One can wish.
41. Not a 2014-15 regular season. Yeah, not bad at all. All right, let's get to the schedule for this weekend. We're going to be watching a lot of basketball. On Saturday, the Wizards and Raptors get the playoffs started at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. It's the Pelicans, Warriors, Bucks, Bulls, Mavs, Rockets. On Sunday, your family will hate you by then. It's Celtics, Cavs, Nets, Hawks, Blazers, Grizzlies, and the nightcap, not bad, Spurs and Clippers. 8 games on. Can't wait for the playoffs to finally start. We'll be back on Monday here on NBA TV at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time to look at the winners and losers, I'm sure, of the first weekend of the playoffs.
Enjoy weekend number 1, folks. Thanks for joining us. And remember, you only get one chance at a game 1 of that particular series, of that particular year, of that particular sport.
Brace the night, people.